पहले मैं आपसे थोड़ा क्षमा मांगता हूँ। मेरा हिंदी इतना अच्छा नहीं हो सकता है और हिंदी में बात करना भी इतना प्रैक्टिस नहीं है। सो फिर भी मैं कोशिश करूँगा। I have prepared a short presentation, but I think that can be shared later also, no problem. But what I have learned from these two interventions just now, Indian mountains and oceans are linked. I think you must have heard in Buddhist philosophy, there is something called interconnectedness. The entire reality, entire cosmos is interconnected. It's not just the mountains and the oceans, but all other things. Similarly, all our lives are also interconnected. So if we see it in an interconnected manner, then I think part of the fragmented approach which you have mentioned is our failure to see these interconnections. I think the other day one of our speakers said, we are not able to link what happens 3 months, 4 months later to the happenings now. We are not able to see the correlation. We are not able to see the causal relationships. So this is our failure, and the failure is something what I have suffered from is called myopia. Myopia is short-sightedness. We are not able to see far enough into the future and make some kind of a sense out of it. That's the problem. And some of the interventions, I used to teach one course called Development Interventions at IRMA. I always used to urge my students, development is a far more serious business than a business management or than an enterprise you run and make some money out of it. Because if you make a wrong intervention, you can see what kind of impacts it will generate. Not just for you, what will happen to you? Nothing will happen to you. You may become, from here to another organization, you will move away. But the local people where you have made the intervention are going to suffer. And especially in the Himalayan region, where we talk about the general mountain regions as more fragile. What is this fragile nature of it? I think I understand the fragile nature is narrow limits. See, I'm seeing the road. You have a very narrow road. If you make a simple mistake of not taking a little side, then you are out somewhere, not on the road. But if you have a broad road, you can move. You can again come back. You can make some mistakes. Nothing much will happen. The fragile region will not allow you to make bigger mistakes because the limits are defined very finely. And we don't have this understanding of these limits and the thresholds, very narrow thresholds. So otherwise what will happen is I can make a big mistake and then come back. But here I can't make mistake. So when you are making a development intervention, it is very necessary for us to understand what we should not be doing. That's far more important. There is no experimentation. There is no trial and error, please. There is no time for your learning. You will learn here and then you will run away with another job. But the people will be left with those problems. So development intervention is a far more serious business. Now I'll come to the paradigm of development, I think, which Sir also has mentioned. I think our paradigm of development is completely wrong. That's the problem. What is the wrong with this development? I would encourage you, because he is also studied development economics, I think it was told. In the development economics, there is one Professor Indiresan, you might have heard. He was former director of IIT Madras. Due to some political thing, he has to step out of the directorship and he went on a sabbatical. I think that is for our goodness, for our gain. He wrote one book called Managing Development. Okay, it is worth book reading. He makes two distinctions. All economics people also make this distinction, but forget actually when they are talking about development. Growth and development are two different things. Growth is necessary, but not sufficient for development. I think I'll explain. So if you look at a child who is growing, he will have to put on some weight before he can grow a little taller. That means what is happening? His intake is more than what he is consuming, and it is stored, and it is allowing him to develop to the next stage. And development also happens to stages. I think child development stages, many stages, theories of development are there. You can grow, but you may not develop. I think if you ask some of the people, why are you changing job? I ask some of my students. They say, yeah, it is a good job, I am enjoying, I am doing, but I am not developing, I am not growing, I am stagnating. So what is the aspiration? Everybody wants to grow. And why grow? Growth is necessary, but will he be satisfied with that growth? No. He wants to get into the next league of the development. Like a aeroplane takeoff, the takeoff theories of development are also there. And if you ask Kalam, who is also Indiresan's friend, he will talk about orbital shift. You are moving, running, going in one orbit. But for you to go to the next orbit, even for an electron to shift into the next orbit, it requires a push. So development requires such kind of a push. There is a critical minimum push theory. And similarly, there is a big push theory. So this has to be big enough to put you into the next orbit. It has to be put you into the next development stage. You need to garner quite a bit and then take that step. That is what you do in a long jump or this thing. You run from far off. If you sometimes see the cricket, you see the fast bowler. To gain that fastness in his thing, how much running he is doing. So development is like that. You have to do a lot of these things so that you can take the next jump. It is not taking next step, please. I am a old enough man suffering from several things. I take easily, still take steps. If you ask me to jump out of this table to the next side, I can't do it. It's now that development is beyond me. I can only walk. I can only manage. Maybe I can grow, but I cannot develop. I think another economist, Schumpeter, you might have heard, who argued no surplus is necessary for even sustenance. For you to remain at the same level, some growth is required. And that growth will not be there if there is no surplus. You look at entire our farming policies and all that, how we depress the incomes of the farmers. And you still say they will grow. How they will grow? And you see only pauperization of farmers in this country. I have not seen one small farmer becoming a big farmer. Very rarely, if at all, happened. But many big farmers have become small farmers have become marginal have become landless. Why it happens? In any activity, if you don't generate adequate surplus, there is a level of surplus which is required to sustain it at that level. If you want to grow, it requires more. Now, you are not even giving enough to eat for me, and you expect me as a child to grow. How am I going to grow and go into the next development stage? I will never. And after some time, I have lost the capacity to grow also. After an age, we don't grow much. But at a period when the child requires that nutrition or this thing, that time he is starved. is stunted. Can you reverse that? You can't reverse. So I think we must understand whenever we are making interventions, there are certain things which cannot be reversed. And look for the negative things that might happen, which cannot be reversed. That's why wisdom is required for development. Growth, ठीक है. I am making 10 rupees a day, I may make 11 rupees a day, and small marginal growth, etc., will be there. But all that efforts we are making in the name of development is maybe helping some people to achieve that little marginal benefit, which is not sufficient for them to move into the next stage of development. If you look at any Professor Anirudh Krishna's readings of what is happening to the poverty, what change all our development efforts have made, the degree of change in the incidence of poverty, very little. There are some people who are falling into poverty, some people are getting out of poverty. If you see the net change in the poverty is not much. Nothing much to really feel good about. That happens because we are talking of development, we are not making adequate effort to reach the development thresholds, which will put the people into the next orbit of whatever stage they are, and then fooling ourselves and also fooling them to some extent that no, we are all developing and then we are making a lot of development effort. And this also happens because we are in a democracy and we have to get votes to elect. And you know, all state governments' decisions and everything, they are populist. And the populist decisions, which are myopic in the nature, they are thinking that they will get their votes. Maybe they will get some votes also. But I think you can't play this game for very long. The poor get disillusioned, are already disillusioned, and they will get further disillusioned. The game cannot be played same way. So this is the problem of misunderstanding of growth and development. And of course, there are places where growth also is not happening. That is a separate story. But seemingly some growth is happening. There also it is not good enough to call development. So don't call yourself a development professional unless you understand very clearly what development requires and whether you are doing that. So this is what I used to tell my students as well. You have heard of these production systems. What we have called a capitalist production system is there. Okay, what it will work for? It will work for those who have capital. What it does for the rest of the people? Not much. So similarly, if you are talking about sustainable development, then all notions of your development are linked to only economic, but not looking at the ecology and the society. Only one-sided pursuit of it will destabilize this economy and society. So, the local gets destabilized. Himalayas will get destabilized, not by the local people. He is right, the global destabilizes the local. Whatever globalization we are talking about, it is going to destabilize the local. You look at the ancient futures, a film made on Ladakh, a longitudinal study, how it depicts how the global destabilizes the local, both ecology as well as the society. Our social systems are very strongly linked to the ecological systems. If the ecology is fragile, society is also equally fragile. And you are making a mistake here, you are making a mistake there as well. I think what's the alternative? Okay, we can jump into the opposites very easily. No? That's how our thinking goes. If global is a problem, I think there are people who are recognizing the problem with the global. Now they are started talking about local. In local has to be micro. That is why Indiration is very clear. Development cannot happen for all people and for all this thing, etc. It will only go by segments by segments. context by context, village by village, family by family. So there are issues there. So unless you see development that way, that is why the local is important. I am glad that you had put that word. That is the only thing which has attracted me to come here. Otherwise, I shouldn't have come here at all, given my condition and this and that. Where is the solution for even global problem is there in the local only. A series of locations, if you really correct them, then the global or the whole will become better. There is no other solution. You can't really turn the global globe and then say Earth is going to be different from tomorrow or Himalayas is going to be different from tomorrow. It's not going to happen. So this is where I'll just take 1 minute. And then the spirit of working. The capitalist rationale for production is going to destabilize. It has destabilized. Enough evidence is everywhere. If you have to embrace other system, what else? Then I think the solution is Swadeshi, that is the local this thing. And then also in Lok Sangraha. You might have heard of Lok Sangraha. It is not just for you, you live. It is also for the Loka. And what is this Loka? Is again local world of your own. It may be just your family. You can expand it to cover the community. You may expand it to cover your country. It can be expandable. But the local, your loka is your world, whatever your world you think. And then within that, Sarvodaya. Within your family, let us say your loka is your family only. Yes, there are some people who are family centric. They are all doing everything for the family. That's good. But within that family, it has to be Sarvodaya. It can't be just for girl child or boy child or this or that. So I think these ideas will have something. And I'll come back with something. I think your name is Subham. If our traditional goals of development you see, because Subham is not sufficient. शुभ के साथ होगा लाभ और लाभ के साथ होगा शुभ. Gain is not good enough. Subham is also necessary. There are actually two more which are often not seen or not even forgotten also. Vruddhi or Siddhi. You need what is good, what is gainful, what is growth oriented, and then what gives you the satisfaction at the end of it. If you see the fourfold goals, then you can reformulate your sustainable development goals to fit these four, and then I think you will have a different way of looking at the sustainable development goals. I think this is where I'll stop, but I have something more to say on the processes of development. That I'll come back if there is a chance to come back. So thank you very much for listening to me.